So we start at the GPO, O'Connell Street. Here's when Michael Collins would have moved to Dublin first to take part in the rising. Other factors were involved as well, of course, but this was one of the main reasons. And he took part in this not as one of the major leaders, but nonetheless was a part of the rising itself. Next was the place when the rising didn't go to plan, or at least maybe it did go to plan for some people. But in the case of Michael Collins, he would have been here in Moore Street among signatories. I think it was 7 signatories of the failed rebellion, and they would have hid out. This was like their final headquarters of the rebellion, and this is where they would have surrendered. We begin really Michael Collins' tour, especially during the Director of Intelligence role that he took during the War of Independence. Now, I'm not too sure when it was, but he lived on this street, 44 Mountjoy Street. And I want to apologise in advance for some of these scenes where we had a little problem with the mic on the day. We just had to kind of run and gun it, so I have some subtitles. So here we are, 44 Mountjoy Street. I'm aware that there's people living here, so I don't want to stay too long. Apparently Michael Collins lived here for a while in 44 Mountjoy Street. And then across the street is number 30, and that's where one of his girlfriends was living. And then there's another one, I don't know if it's another up the street or down the street, but there was actually another girlfriend living. If you look across there, there's a lane there, that's where he used to park his bike. At 29 Parnell Square West, and this is actually formerly Vaughan's Hotel. As you can see, the headquarters of the IRB. Was a safe house for Michael Collins, Harry Boland, and all his friends during the revolutionary period, especially during the Irish War of Independence. So this is where a lot of stuff was happening in this very hotel. So yeah, it's really, I've passed this many times. I didn't even know it was here until I did my research. So there you go. Thanks to Anthony of Mr. Fox Restaurant for gifting this beautiful whiskey. Mr. Fox, it is styled on Charles Stewart Parnell, a very revered Irish history character, revolutionary himself, and it's an absolutely beautiful whiskey. Tips its cap to the legendary Mr. Fox, better known as Charles Stewart Parnell, one of the most revered figures in Irish history. This whole square is Parnell Square, after Charles Stewart Parnell, the uncrowned King of Ireland. You really get a sense of somebody when you know that they were in these locations, and it was quite eerie in a sense, sad, and just a peculiar feeling when you're doing or going to the places that they were in. And next up is the place called the Confession Box on Marlborough Street, next to the Pro Cathedral. During the time of the War of Independence, there was rebels that were excommunicated, including Michael Collins. So they would have used this. This was actually known as the Maid of Erin pub at the time. And there were sympathetic priests that would meet the rebels here to give them confession. Michael Collins was a fairly devout Catholic, although he had different views of the Catholic Church and state as opposed to Eamon de Valera. But they would have met in this pub, and you can see in these pubs the publicans really honor Michael Collins, because there's always a picture, for the most part, of Collins in a prominent place. Some people say he was like the adopted son of Dublin. Being a Corkman himself, it would have been an interesting rivalry, but friendly one at that. So here is Bachelor's Walk. We're coming in. We're doing this view because through that laneway you get to an important place. One of his offices were here in Bachelor's Walk. We'll have a look in a while. But through this laneway, some people call it Collins Laneway. And I'll give a shout out to Irish Central as well, Dermot McAvoy, who does a great article on this on the Irish Central website. This pub, the Oval, was a haunt of Michael Collins because next door on the top floor of the Easton's building was a place called the Dump, maybe a waiting room for the IRB or for the squad members. Here are some of the head busts of the 1916 Rising Rebels. In the Oval Bar, you can see that there is a lot of history here. It just has a lot of history, and Michael Collins and the rest of them would have spent time in here for sure. A big thing about Michael Collins is he hid in plain sight and dressed like a gentleman and a businessman, and that's how we got away with a lot of stuff. Here it's really sad to see the lane so full of drug activities and stuff like that. It's horrible, so that's why I couldn't film down the lane. But that was one of his offices there in 32 Bachelor's Walk. Now we'll go to another office there, and that is in Crow Street, I believe is the next one. Yes, that's in the Temple Bar region. This was another office that he actually kept hidden through the name disguised as John F. Fowler. I don't know if that's still there, but John F. Fowler, and then this was a very important intelligence office for him. He rarely went there because of security. Across the street then is another laneway. So sorry, I think this is the one that's called Collins Alleyway, not the other one. But anyway, this leads up to the Stag's Head. This pub is very important for Michael Collins because this is one of his favorite pubs. And we'll get onto that now in a sec, but we want to just show you this section here because it's hugely important. There's so many places along this street here, Wicklow and Exchequer Street and Grafton Street. It just is a really prominent place of Michael Collins' life and career because a lot of these buildings housed Michael Collins in terms of his offices and stuff. But let's go back to the Stag's Head. This was a vitally important place because he would have frequented it here. And there's an old story about having Mick's barrel, the publican having Mick's barrel. So in honor of Mick, I did have a drop of whiskey. That's what he used to do after a long day in the office because he was the finance minister after all, going over the books. This was a way for him to chill out after a long day of it because he was an extremely hard worker. So this pub, just a beautiful pub. This was one of his first offices that I didn't catch live on the day. So here is a kind of a Google map version of it. This is his first office. He ran a trust or a charity out of here to help the rebel activities. And across the street at the iconic Central Hotel is where he had informal meetings as well and also housed and accommodated IRA members. So yeah, that's just a look at the street again. That's the Central Hotel there. And let's go down on Wicklow Street. There was a hotel. They would have frequented it as well. And then he had a financial office on Andrew Street. There was a little mix-up. I thought it was 3 Andrew Street, but it's actually 4 according to the old stand that we're going into next. This one, number 4, that's where he had his main financial office. Also, this was an attempted ambush site for Lord French that didn't happen. Just a look out through Old Stand pub on Exchequer Street. Like I said before, in the Old Stand pub where he used to frequent, have informal IRB meetings. They honour Michael Collins with his picture. There's a little bit of information about him there and a wall dedicated to him, which is beautiful. Such iconic stuff. And absolutely, you do feel the history. This is where it gets really sad. Around the corner from that hotel, which is now AIB Bank, is where he bought his engagement ring for his love, Kitty Kiernan. And this is a really sad moment because we all know that he got engaged on the same year, just a few months before his assassination. And this is exactly where he bought it on Grafton Street. This is a really old establishment, a beautiful place. We finish on Glasnevin, and there's the old legend that when he was shot that he said, "Bury me with the boys in Glasnevin." Even if he didn't say it, it's a beautiful story because all the boys, all the lads are there buried. All the lads from the Irish Revolutionary period, all buried. And Michael Collins has an iconic spot and it really is front and center of everything. But I think the most beautiful part of this whole thing and the saddest part is a love not lived. between him and Kitty Kiernan, and it was just really sad because they're buried quite close together. Actually, this tower is right over Daniel O'Connell's grave. This is Michael Collins' grave, and I was there the morning of August 22nd, 2025. Really sad moment. Laid some flowers and acknowledged the great man, the big fella. May he rest in peace. God rest his soul.